right, thank you everyone for tuning in for this current episode of It's Action Time.
It's action time.
Got today with us, my name is Matt. I've got Jason and Sean with us today. We are going to be talking about 80s cartoons. Particularly those action-filled ones that a lot of dudes enjoyed. I know there's some of the ladies out there that might have watched the cartoon that's displayed very prominently on Jason's shirt. Speaking of which, that Jason, if you could take it away and lead us from here.
Yeah, well, so welcome to our episode of 80s cartoons. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't like a good old 80s cartoon series. And first of all, when I was I don't know, what were we about in our early part of our life, we the first cartoons we all probably were watching were during the 80s, and G.I. Joe was one of the first cartoons that I can remember watching. Real American hero, G.I. Joe is there. So, I mean, just hearing that theme song as a little boy, just being like, "Oh, look at what's coming here!" I mean, you saw everybody walking by. You saw Duke coming up there. I mean, Cobra Commander, Destro. You had it all. And not only were the cartoon fantastic, then you had the toy line that came out right with it at the same time.
Everybody had to have G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip.
Kung Fu grip.
Yes.
G.I. Joe.
Yep.
It could karate chop, but you could also
do this and you could do this.
You could also put an object in its hand,
and it would.
It wouldn't slip.
It was a fantastic toys to play with. It had it all. They were much better action figures than the Star Wars action figures that came out before that.
This is true. The elbows. There's much more movement. The knees bend.
It had the little hair tie kind of things.
That in the waist. You could, if you pulled it hard enough,
pull them up. You could. You could do the.
You could do some torture.
You could do some twisting and some pulling.
If you threw them down on the ground hard enough, they would actually. I don't want to admit this. I've done this. Peer pressure from friends. It wasn't my idea. You throw them on the ground hard enough, they explode. The arms and legs go everywhere, and then you're like, "What did I just do to my action figure?"
My G.I. Joe action figure with Kung Fu grip.
Do I have any other ones I don't like?
G.I. Joe is cool because there were so many different characters. It didn't matter who they were, where they were. There were males, there were females. They all kind of blended together, and it all worked as one.
They were all awesome.
It was really cool. I really dug G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe definitely, they stepped it up with the action figures.
It was Hasbro that did the whole thing.
Yeah, it's true. That's a good point. And just from that cartoon basically started it off, and I think that was one of the first cartoons who then took the toy line. I think Hasbro learned from what they had with Star Wars, and then they took G.I. Joe and were just like, all right, we're going to capitalize on this and get little. And it was mostly directed towards boys, not that girls didn't play with it, but when you went over to your friend's house and you saw that he had a different vehicle than you had, it kind of just drove you mental, and you were like, I need to have that. I have to have that. And then you were like, all right, I need to get the airplane. I need to get the jet. I need to get this. And you were bothering your parents so much to get you all this stuff. I think I was at Toys R Us once every week trying to get a new action figure, trying to get just scoping out down the aisle, trying to get. Just trying to get something different, because they were the coolest toys to set up, and you could have your own battle in your
G.I. Joe section
room.
was like the candy store.
It was that's where I went first. I walked straight to the G.I. Joe aisle, and I could have stayed there all night until store closed, just sitting there. If I would have filled up a whole cart and just left. I mean, my mom probably would have not been very happy, and at least she let me come home with one action figure. Thank you, Mom, very much. I really appreciate that. Heartfelt message to Mom right there. Thank you for letting me leave with an action figure every time that I left. G.I. Joe was just
now,
incredible.
Were you Cobra or were you G.I. Joe?
Well, let me just... Do you mean Cobra?
It didn't even... I don't even know if it mattered to me. Like,
No.
I would just kind of pick which ones I liked or disliked, and that would determine if they were good and bad. Just more or less depending on what they looked like. If they just didn't look as cool,
did you ever?
They,
Did you ever make characters turn bad, go from Joe to Cobra? Kind of like a dark side thing, because I used to do that because Destro didn't like Cobra Commanders, so sometimes Destro would help out the Joes and just come on, try to stop that whining little that Cobra Commander. Yeah, that Cobra Commander, because he was a whiner. Cobra Commander was
absolutely a whiner.
Yeah, he was just he would make you laugh like
He's
this.
A kid that needed paste in the back of the room.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely hilarious. So like, I just thought it was hilarious. I'm like, this guy's whining. He's in charge of this giant army that's going to trying to take over the world. I'm like, no, Destro, this metal-headed figure.
Take over the whole thing.
His vehicle, man, he just looked like Mr. T driving the A-Team van, man. You were just like, you knew this guy was bad. I'm not going to say the word Matt, so Matt doesn't beat me out. But yeah, he was bad. It's all right, I said it. Destro was awesome. So like, yeah, G.I. Joe for me was just. That was one of the first cartoons. It was great. Who didn't want the underwear of G.I. Joe? Come on, let's just be serious. You were rocking that. That after where
the comforter, the bed sheets, yeah.
Oh, everything. See, that goes back to the merchandising thing. They just took it to
merchandising, but it was really good merchandising to go along with the video game, or not the video game, but the cartoon, and to have the merchandise to go into Toys R Us or the local toy store and pick up that stuff and just have it in your hand. It was great fun. Oh, love that stuff.
I remember I met some other boys around my age through my dad. It was like some guy he had been working with, and I go over there. These kids, they had it was like the SR-71 Blackbird. The black like stealth plane. They had the aircraft carrier. That thing. I can't even imagine like. I don't know if they even make toys.
Joe they ever thought of.
They don't make toys that big anymore.
No,
but back then, I saw this thing and I didn't even know like this was a thing. I was in awe. Dad, can we go over there again? Can we go over there again? I wanted to go over there all the time. And I wanted to bring, even bring my Star Wars stuff. They were all around the same size, so they were compatible.
Pretty much anything.
Absolutely,
Sure.
I'll bring a TIE fighter over and battle some G.I. Joes. It's all good. But I mean, like G.I. Joe, really, I feel like they stepped it up with like the size and the scale of some of these toys a little bit more than even Star Wars did. Star Wars, I think. They led the way with how many different types of action figures and things that they could make. But
Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and you had the Jawas and the Sand People, and you had the monster from the trash compactor, and you had every single monster and creature known to mankind thrown in. But then we had like G.I. Joe. They were all like guys you could relate to, and even your girls, you can kind of relate to those as well. So it really enhanced that feeling that you had along with the G.I. Joe cartoon.
The Star Wars figures, they hadn't perfected the kung fu grip. I always remember you'd put the gun in their hand and it's kind of like it's aiming off to the side.
It pointed that way or it pointed that way.
You have to turn them so their face. Try to turn their head, so they're facing the enemy. But G.I. Joe didn't have that problem. I mean, they were so articulated that you could.
Yeah, they could get the job done. You could change the wrist movement and the elbow movement as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just remember the camouflage on some of them was just like, it's like, oh wow, this is awesome, man. I'm holding I'm holding a real trooper right here, and he's about to go take on Cobra right here. I mean, just fantastic G.I. Joe. I mean, I could talk G.I. Joe all day, but we're going to have to, let's move on to a different 80s character.
I want to bring up one more thing before we move on.
One more thing, Maddie.
With G.I. Joe, I don't know if I ever had recalled why, you know, we had bad guys and good guys. They just were. They were the bad guys and the good guys, but like I don't know if I ever understood, like, well, what did they do that, you know, why were they so bad? Like, you just kind of, oh, those are the bad guys. They're trying to,
I think that's probably
trying to hurt the good guys, and we're supposed to root for the good guys because they're good guys. But you never really, you know, like, I never knew why I hated, you're supposed to hate the bad guys so much in G.I. Joe. And that there's kind of a funny thing to me looking back about it. Like, I don't know if it was explained. Maybe it was, and I was just too young to understand. They might have tried to build some backstory in the couple of the movies, but the cartoon, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, there's the bad guys. That's who we're going after.
It just starts, boom, episode one, just boom, you're right in a battle. Yeah, you're right in a battle. That's just
how it is. You know, they're bad guys, and that's who we go after.
And we're the good guys, and we got to move on.
But you know what? It's a hook, line, and sinker. They get us because what do we want? The bad guys always have some cool stuff, and you were like, all right, we got to be bad too.
Yeah,
we got to be bad too. You know what I mean? It's exactly how it is. All right, thoughts on G.I. Joe? We have lots of it. Sean, why don't you bring up our next cartoon we'll discuss now from the 80s, a wonderful decade.